Hello, my name's Anna, and for this presentation I'm going to reflect on my learning and development in the unit Readiness for Occupational Therapy Practice in 2025 this semester. I will be sharing some of my key learnings and takeaways from the unit and how I've grown as an emerging occupational therapist and how I've also engaged in the learning outcomes for the unit. So for my key learnings, I learned a lot in this unit, but I wanted to identify some, especially surrounding some of the assessment items that we did. So for example, in assessment 1, I was able to use a lot of reflective practice when exploring my strengths and weaknesses in relation to the Occupational Therapy Australia competency standards. And also in regards to the Thrive Well ACT practice setting. And this process for me was really valuable, I guess. It gave me a clearer understanding of where I was currently standing in my confidence, and also just like whether I was ready, I guess, and what areas I was needing to develop in those practice settings and standards. So from this reflection, I definitely was able to create a lot of professional developmental goals for my ongoing growth as an occupational therapy student, which I think was really important. And then I guess when it came to assessment item 2, I was able to then use those learning goals that I built and explored then the importance of like continuous professional development, or CPD, which I came to understand is a lifelong process, I guess, and that it helps to ensure that occupational therapists remain skilled and current and responsive to client needs, which I think was really also good for me. And through the assessment, I guess I was able to begin working towards the goals that I identified in the assessment item 1. And I think that helped me to start to look at taking tangible steps towards my personal and professional development in those practice areas, in those competency standards, I think. And I guess that relates back then to my preparedness to like respond to the evolving practice context of occupational therapy, and like acknowledging that being a professional in this area requires like adaptability and ongoing learning and responsiveness for client and community needs across the board and in all practice settings. Next, I want to talk about some personal development that I was able to identify from completing this unit. So I guess being a part of this unit has like enabled me to strengthen my confidence in my ability to grow as an occupational therapist student. And I've developed skills, I guess, in reflective practice, professional communication through the speeches, definitely goal setting in assessment 1, and CPD in assessment 2. I also became really aware of my personal strengths, such as empathy and persistence, while recognizing like my areas of improvement, which is definitely anxiety and managing uncertainty, I guess, and balancing boundaries, especially in group assessment items, I think. So I think that was really important for me. I also wanted to talk about my professional development as well as employment options that I learned about throughout this unit. I guess in group discussions particularly, I became aware of my professional practice issues, I guess, and like in understanding, redefining the scope of practice. Like we had a lot of communication about that, and I think that was really important, and also how to describe that to someone who doesn't know what occupational therapy is, or how to describe it to an MDT. I think that was really good. We talked about different registration requirements when we talked to the grad students, and like realities of workplace expectations and like what we're going to get out of it. I think it was important to talk about those things because it's going to help me prepare for next year when I start to apply for jobs, and also enter the workforce with like realistic expectations and strategies on how to prepare myself for that. And most importantly, like I think I now know how important CPD is, and reflection and feedback, and how they're really essential tools for like safe and effective client care, and client-centered practice as well. When I look at the learning outcomes, I definitely believe that I've achieved them. I guess for me, the ability to engage in reflective practice was demonstrated in Assessment 1, where I was able to critically analyse my strengths and weaknesses against the OTA competency standards, as well as the practice setting of Thriver. And I also was able to then understand the continuous professional development as I demonstrated in Assessment 2. And I began to work towards my personal goals for growth as an occupational therapy student. And I outlined my CPD strategy that I then completed for my ongoing learning. I also was able to develop skills in professional identity, communication, and collaboration, which I think I practiced throughout group discussions, tasks, and the final group assessment. And one area that I know that I want to continue to develop is applying that theory to practice in clinical settings, which I guess I'll have the opportunity to on placement. And then to improve in the future, I want to keep working on my reflective practice, because I think that's so important, and looking at CPD strategies during my placements and future studies, as well as my professional career. Yeah. In summary, I think this Readiness for Occupational Therapy unit has given me tools to reflect on my current skills, set goals for my improvement as an occupational therapist student, and to begin engaging in that lifelong professional development, both throughout my studies and then in my professional career. I also feel like I'm more prepared now to take the next step in my occupational therapy practice, and with that clear understanding of my strengths and my growth areas, as well as the emerging occupational therapist responsibilities, and then both professionally and personally, I think I've definitely been able to identify those a little bit more strongly. I also feel like I've understood a lot more of the employment-related needs, and I've learnt a lot about CPD strategies, and I think I have met those unit learning outcomes, and I feel confident moving forward into my next placement. So yeah, I guess thank you for listening to my reflection.